a very rare thing in the history of humankind where a particular man or woman has such an extraordinary impact on history in this particular time as the President of East Timor, Timor-Leste, during his particular time on this earth. The challenge that Timor-Leste had in 1975 and thereafter to gain independence from a country that was enormously more populous and certainly ruthless at the time, trying to prevent it. If you look back at history, there are very few times when that has succeeded. And it's also not very often where one particular name keeps coming up as a crucial person in that particular struggle. There are others, of course, José Ramos-Horta and others who were also hugely important in this struggle. But José Ramos-Horta kept the light of that country, that flame, going throughout the world, and his courage and his intellect and his diplomatic skills, his political nous eventually shone through. He wrote a peace plan in 1992, I understand, presented it to the United Nations, and a way of engaging the occupying country of that small nation state, or hopefully a nation state to come. And it was the awarding of the Nobel Prize in 1996 to him and to Bishop Carlo Belo, who is still alive and living in Portugal mainly, that really caught the imagination, I think, of an even wider circle of people about the plight of this small, struggling would-be country. So there are not too many examples like that in the history of humankind. So it is a great pleasure indeed and an honour to be able to welcome him here tonight, to get his perspective on his country as it now is, and the way this particular College of Surgeons has contributed in some way during that particularly difficult time. He's a roving ambassador or a diplomat, or he is in great demand throughout the world. He's travelled, I think he told me tonight, 156 countries he's been to. He served as president of Timor-Leste from 2007 to 2012. They may want him to come back again as president. He's not pushing for the job, but he is such an incredibly important person in the history of that particular nation state that we'll see what happens there. We need people like him in the world. There are very few of them, and yet the challenges of the world, as he well knows, are not getting any smaller. In many ways, they're getting greater. People of real calibre, like Abraham Lincoln and Mahatma Gandhi and Martin Luther King and others like them, got their reputation through their intellect, their courage, but also their generosity of spirit. And our own Weary Dunlop had that enormous generosity of spirit. Those who had the pleasure to meet him will know what I mean about that. To suffer as much as these people have done, and he certainly did, and the President Ramos-Horta has done, and still come away with it without being embittered, is remarkable. And I'd just like to read a few of his words, because often it is not just the deeds that people are remembered by, but it is their words. And sometimes their words are the only things that survive. If you look at the life of Shakespeare, of course, We know nothing much about his life, but we know a lot about his words, and they continue to resonate with us. But the President said, "In victory be magnanimous. Never seek to humiliate the adversary. If he is on his knees, plead with him to rise up and embrace him. Walk halfway and meet the vanquished ones and embrace them. Invite them to join in a new enterprise of peace and a new future for all." This has been my belief, and in many ways this has been our practice since independence. Ladies and gentlemen, I welcome President Ramos-Horta.
Because it couldn't be too uncommon that I ruin people's milk with my speeches. So it's really privileged to be with you tonight when I received an email from my uncle. I call him my uncle, in Burma. I promptly agreed to join you, accepted without hesitation. In the last few weeks, I have counseled numerous engagements in Europe, but I'm both tired, but also have become a bit dispirited with the international situation. I ask myself, what am I really doing? Going around the world, delivering speeches, because I did a lot of work with the UN when I left office in 2012. First, I was Under Secretary General of the UN, was deployed in West Africa for a year and a half. Then I was invited by Secretary General Ban Ki-moon to chair a UN panel on peace operations to review all the UN peace missions and to propose new thinking, new doctrines, and new operational capacity to address the current international security challenges. And by the time we finished our work and reported to the Secretary General, to the UN Security Council, to the General Assembly, the whole situation had deteriorated, making our report and recommendations sort of outdated. That the UN is no longer fit to address these security challenges, both in a preventive manner, which is the ideal, but also in mediation and resolution of conflicts. The new Secretary General, Antonio Guterres, invited me within weeks of taking office to join a group called High Level Council on Mediation. My mission was supposed to last in September 2019. I resigned last year in September, so it served only 1 year, precisely because of my doubts about how useful we are being. Usually overtaken by events, difficult to anticipate, so difficult to prevent. But not all bad in the world. There are bright spots, and one bright spot is Timor-Leste. But before, I would like to acknowledge here, and I was surprised, pleasantly surprised, that tonight Phil Carson is also here. And I owe my life to him and to many at the Royal Darwin Hospital. And also to the medical team in Dili, the doctors who were serving with Australian military at the time. So it's a real privilege to be with you here. I've known the East Timor program, I've known your work in Timor-Leste from day one, from 99. And I have to say, I'm very sorry that you have spent so much money flying me business class here. If it were practical at all, I would not have mind travel here on the loyal Timor pony. It was my main means of transportation when I was a child. I would go from places where I was born, growing up, like Natarabora in the very south. It would take 2 days to reach the nearest town, and then hopefully I get into Mr. China. The trucks in Timor, the field trucks, they're all owned by small Chinese business people. But that being impractical, so I came. And knowing the extraordinary work you do, I feel even bad that you have to cover my hotel expenses. So I already told Jessica, please, I will cover my hotel cost. It's a token of my appreciation for your incredible, generous humanitarian mission. A word of appreciation to Jessica Redwood for her amazing patience and professionalism and in accommodating my travel requirements. So your MBA, I saw in your card, you say MBA, is very well earned. Please feel free to tell the university where you obtained it. You already told me Deakin University, so that they must be the best in the field, having delivered someone like you. The noble, selfless humanitarian mission you continue to undertake for the underprivileged across the Asia-Pacific region, including in Timor-Leste, saving lives, giving color, light, and happiness to thousands, deeply touch our hearts. And we can, and unfortunately, we can repay you only with eternal gratitude in our hearts. The East Timor Eye program is one of the most successful health programs ever designed and implemented in Timor-Leste. It improved or restored the eyesight of many thousands of destitute people. You train ophthalmologists, optometrists, nurses, lab technicians, and they provide equipment and a building. And I have to say, I have used it many times because I either break my glasses or I want a new one, and I go there often. You know, being the Timorese, where we started, you know, a completely destitute country. You go there and you have a nice building, and then the doctor look at you promptly. And then you go next room. You have maybe 200 choices of frames, and then 10 years ago they already made. And now they even cut. So it's I observe the progress, you know, and I'm always very proud to say our East Timor Eye Center at the hospital is almost as good as a small town in Australia eye center, and that thanks entirely to you. For clarity, I will share a bit with you where we are today in Timor-Leste. And for clarification purposes, I'm not speaking for the government and do not take credit for the many peace dividends our people are enjoying today. However, I humbly offer myself as the sacrificial lamb to atone for the sins and failures you may identify. Failures committed by ignorance, commission, or commissioned by former and current leaders of the country. One of the greatest success of our country is the national reconciliation process of healing the wounds among Timorese and Indonesia. Because when the sounds of the cannons die out and the bells of peace echo across the town, the next phase begins, requiring courageous, strong, generous, visionary leadership in healing the wounds of the heart and of the soul. The only path to sustaining peace. Can you imagine the possibility of reconciliation in Syria or South Sudan? I'm familiar with both situations. It is extraordinarily difficult, next to impossible. Academically, we can say nothing is impossible. But let me tell you, that is just academically and romantically true. Sometimes it is just not possible to visualize in our generation healing the wounds in Syria. And the end of the war is celebrated. We are often, wars are often easily fought and won or lost. And the end of the war is celebrated by the winning side. But peace might not be long lasting if the winning side does not have the courage, the wisdom of the truly great to inspire and lead all in healing, forgiveness, and reconciliation, and never seek it to humiliate the other side. Xanana Guzmão, many of you, most of you familiar with, he was a freedom fighter in the mountain of Timor for 17 years. He was a prisoner of conscience in Indonesia. He taught about respecting our adversaries in war and in peace. And he learned about Indonesians, brothers and sisters, like fighting them in the mountains, valleys and caves of Timor-Leste, but also he loved them, learned about them and loved them while they're prisoners from 92 to 99. The nation heeded our call for reconciliation and forgiveness. Reconciliation and forgiveness among Timorese and with our Indonesian brothers and sisters. Because the conflict was not black and white in the sense that the evil was all in one side. Well, in any conflict, most conflicts, there are faults, there are crimes committed by the many sides in the conflict. And the Timorese are not exempted from that. So we had to have the courage, first to reconcile, to heal the wounds among Timorese. And then between us and the people of Indonesia, the leadership in Indonesia. Indonesian leaders of all political persuasions responded in kind, showed statesmanship, and walked halfway, meeting our extended hand of friendship. We were told at the time, from the UN, friends in Washington, in the US Congress, in Europe, that we should push for a special international tribunal to try the crimes of the past. We rejected special tribunals. We believe that the greatest justice of all was our freedom. Freedom made possible in '99 when the new Indonesia, led by interim president B.J. Habibie, agreed to a UN-supervised popular consultation. If Indonesian students, people had not gone to the streets in the aftermath, in the context of the financial crisis of 2007, 2008, and bringing down so hardcore, I don't know whether there would have been a referendum in Timor-Leste. So we owe our freedom to people in Indonesia who went to the streets and ousted the dictatorship. As leaders, we were accused by some among us, our own people, civil society, and in the international community, of undermining justice. That by rejecting a special tribunal, we were encouraging impunity and betraying the victims. I do not argue against the academic validity of these criticisms. But let me tell, I had a meeting, sometimes I can be a bit arrogant, rude with people. I was having this meeting with Secretary General Ban Ki-moon. I was president at that time. And Ban Ki-moon, with all his people in front of me, and was reading from notes, probably written for him by the people around him, saying this, that lack of justice encourages impunity, and that leads to violence and undermine democracy, blah, blah, blah. And so, no justice, justice in the sense of prosecutorial justice, it means undermine justice, and that means undermine democracy, etc., etc. I told Ban Ki-moon, Mr. Secretary General, your problem and my problem is that some academics write up academic jargon and we all happily repeat them. Let me tell you, Mr. Secretary General, some instances that challenge these academic jargon. Spain and Portugal, 50 years under dictatorship. Almost one after another, the dictatorship fell in Spain and in Portugal. Are we saying that? And there was no special tribunal of any sort in Spain or in Portugal to try the collaborators of those two regimes. Are we saying that Portugal and Spain are not functioning, vibrant democracies? They are. Ban Ki-moon not in agreement. Then I said, the UN General Assembly defined apartheid as crime against humanity. So ipso facto, in the post-apartheid era, there should have been an international tribunal to try everyone involved in sustaining apartheid. But Mandela said, no, we must heal the wounds. Are we saying that Mandela is wrong and there should have been a special? So, and South Africa is doing very well, at least at the time. And I went on. Then Ban Ki-moon stopped reading from the notes. He said, I agree with you. And so I have to say, his advisor never liked me since then. But it doesn't mean those who have this point of view are wrong. Academically, theoretically, yes, of course. But the world is not made of these linear black and white theories. As leaders with responsibility to lead, we remain firm in our conviction that the path of healing, forgiveness, and reconciliation was the right one, the only one. We honor our fallen heroes. We continue till this very day to care for the widows and orphans and try to build a better life, a peaceful and just society. Another success. So in Timor-Leste, since independence, there has not been a single case of anyone who had collaborated with the other side, been harassed, been put in prison, denied jobs. There are many of them in our national parliament. Many serving in the government, others in business. If any criticism today we have is precisely that those who are on the other side of the trench are doing very well today in the new independent Timor-Leste. The other positive is democracy. If you are attentive to references to Timor-Leste, you would have noticed that in the last few months, 3 independent reports rate Timor-Leste very favorably. We are rated the best democracy in Southeast Asia. Well, mind you, there might be some who are a bit cynical. You might answer, well, with those kind of neighbors, it's not too difficult to be the best. If you say that, point well taken. We are rated as having the freest media in Southeast Asia. The same cynicism may apply. On GDP per capita, we are well positioned in comparison to some ASEAN members. I was surprised when I look at the figures. We are above Myanmar by more than $2,000, by double. We are above Cambodia and I think Laos. And that obviously GDP per capita from including oil and gas revenue. I would add, and I would add, so the second point, if you read the UN Human Development Index, the UN Human Development Index is the most comprehensive study on how a country really doing well or not. Because they don't view just per capita income, which can be misleading. They view everything from A to Z, including access to information, to education, democracy, people's participation, people's access to justice, etc., etc. So on the basis of that, Timor-Leste is better than every sub-Saharan African country, with the exception of South Africa and Cape Verde in West Africa, in the Atlantic. We have had so far 15 years of peace and tranquility. And these are sine qua non conditions that enable the government to implement, beginning 2011, the National Strategic Development Plan, the result of an extraordinary consultation process throughout the country, led by Shannon and Guzman. This strategic development plan includes infrastructure projects like roads, the electrification of the entire country, that are indispensable drivers of the economy and sustainable development. Some of you witnessed the 99 utter destruction of our country, and bore witness to our extremely precarious social and economic conditions in 2002. If you go there today, you would appreciate the extraordinary changes that have occurred in the last 10 years. Beginning in 2011, the government launched a multi-year financing of major infrastructure projects. The national and rural roads, a new power generator that now assures 24-hour electricity to 80% of the country, except when they cut. Sometimes people complain too often. 2 regional airports with international standards. We are working on a new modern budgeted, port budgeted $400 million through an innovative public-private partnership arrangement. In 2002, Timor-Leste had less than 20 medical doctors, 19 doctors. With Cuba's generous solidarity, the country now counts on 1,000 medical doctors. By 2021, we will have about over 1,100 plus doctors. Of course, all of them GPs, and we have sent to Cuba more than 30 to do beginning specialized training, 4 years training. While, but in the health sector, there are still too many negatives. While the incidence of malaria has diminished quite significantly, dengue continues to affect too many. Too many bodies and lives are wasted by TB. Food security and malnutrition remain unacceptably high. The agricultural sector is where I would dare say we have not made progress. Quite the contrary. It is a sad, abysmal failure. And it is incomprehensible that we have failed to achieve complete self-sufficiency in rice production, food security, and to eliminate malnutrition and extreme poverty. In 2009, Xanana Guzman launched the Human Capital Development Fund, budget at $30 million a year. These resulted in hundreds of Timorese being awarded scholarships to study and graduated in selected universities and technical institutes across Southeast Asia, Australia, and Portugal. So there are at least more than 200 Timorese studying in Australia with our own scholarship, besides the Australian government scholarship. 10 years ago, hundreds of expatriates were seen assisting throughout our administration. Today, there are hundreds of Timorese with university degrees and advanced diplomas occupying these same positions. Very soon, in your next visit to Timor-Leste, you will enjoy 21st century connectivity and 5G technology. Fiber optic has been installed in the country, and soon a submarine cable will connect Timor-Leste to the world. With Australia, we have resolved differences on the competing maritime boundary claims. As you know, in the past, Australia would claim that the maritime boundary would be drawn at the edge of Australian continental shelf, meaning almost like into our territorial waters. Although geologists of the most reputed in some of the best universities in Scotland on geology, they said actually Australia and Timor-Leste share the same continental shelf. There are no two continental shelves. That being the case, Australia could claim actually the whole of Timor-Leste, or we ourselves, why not Timor, claiming the whole of Australia? You'd probably be better off. The only part of Australia we wouldn't claim would be Tasmania. Too far, and they are actually very nice people, so we wouldn't go. But Xanana Guzman, he was incredible. I think, and I have to say, this leader of ours, he doesn't have huge formal education, but he has his extraordinary mind. He never agreed with some of the compromise we made with Australia to secure the development of Bayundan, for instance. And he always waited for a chance to challenge Australia. And he did, when using Australian aid, and there was one gentleman, aid person, working in Timor-Leste, who set up listening devices in our cabinet offices, meeting to spy on the Timorese government. So that was a show of bad faith. And so that gave Xanana the reason to challenge. And I have to tell you, it requires real courage and audacity. I would have thought many times though, because if you lose the challenge, you lose the whole possibility, any influence in any negotiation. But he succeeded. Australia agreed to a UN mediation under the international law of the sea treaty, the mechanism. Shanana did not blink. He was fully persuaded in his heart and mind that he owed it to the nation to resolve this unjust situation. But I must also say this was possible because we are dealing with a country with very fair-minded people. Australian Prime Minister Malcolm Turnbull, a refined banker turned successful Prime Minister, and the formidable Foreign Minister Julie Bishop, and the Australian people are to be thanked. As an undisputed regional power, Australia could have simply ignored our legal challenge. But Australian leaders succumbed not to pressure, but to their own conscience, to do the right thing, to be fair to the poorer and weaker of the relationship. So we reached this historical agreement that strengthened the rule of international law. Because I will tell you, many countries in the region in the world follow very closely the progression on the Timor-Leste challenge. It was the first time that this UNCLOS mechanism was being used. The Japanese were following it very close because of the East China Sea dispute. China and others following very closely because of the South China Sea dispute. So it was a very positive, important precedent that is strengthened the rule of international law. There are other ills that affect us, and that is corruption, waste, mismanagement. I was in Guinea-Bissau in West Africa as a special envoy representative of the Secretary General. And in the midst of many of my conversations there, one of the presidents in the region, I don't mention the country, he told me, President Ramos-Horta, in my country, everybody wants to be a minister because in 6 months, they steal enough to build a palatial home. Because in that particular country, government falls almost every 6 months. That's why I was there to mediate. And I told him, Mr. President, in my country, Timor-Leste, we also steal, but slowly, over 5 years, not in 6 months. Well, when I went back home, I shared with my compatriots and my competitors this story. They said, well, you are a bit outdated. Now we steal millions. Our courts have been fighting back. And many important people are awaiting trial or are already in jail. We would not have come this far in Timor-Leste without our development partners. Australia has been in the forefront from 1999 till today. Even as development aid, ODA, was being draconianly cut throughout, the level of aid to Timor-Leste was maintained. The total volume of aid is maintained, and the cooperation on the defense and security continued to be very strong. But other countries, the European Union as such, Portugal, Germany, the US, New Zealand, Brazil, Japan, Korea, China, Singapore, have been steady friends. The United Nations itself, its agencies, the World Bank, all of them. We have had more than 15 years of fruitful security and defense cooperation with countries like Australia, Portugal, and others. Our success would not have been possible without our friends and neighbors. We owe much to them. We are expected to be the 11th member of ASEAN, if not this year, maybe next year. Any doubts by some in ASEAN about Timor-Leste's ability to join ASEAN have now been dissipated. And now it's only a matter of formalities of time before Timor-Leste joined ASEAN as the 11th member. Our relationship with Indonesia remains one of the best in the entire region. And I can assure you, there are no two countries in Asia that have a better relation than Timor-Leste and Indonesia. Indonesia, like all other ASEAN countries, have been steady friends of Timor-Leste. And last but not least, do not underestimate your own personal or group contribution, whether to Timor-Leste or any country in the region. Your contribution to Timor-Leste, your dedication, your generosity are living marks in the personal lives of people. People who are saved in a surgery, people who lost, won back their eyesight, when they, in their humility, in their poverty in a village, they thought they were blind. And then taken to Delhi to see the doctors. After 20 minutes, half hour, they realize they are seeing the light again. This is your legacy of the extreme importance of what individuals can do. In the midst of the challenge that I mentioned, the disheartening, the dangerous trend in the world today, I have to say I'm an optimist, but today I would say I'm very worried about the world situation. 7 years ago, I gave a speech in Geneva at the Palais des Nations at the United Nations. There were two of us, me and the former president of Finland, Martti Ahtisaari, a top negotiator. Most questions came to me. Of course, because Martti Ahtisaari is a total politician, diplomat. He will not give you any real answers. I was asked a question about Syria. And that was the beginning of the conflict. And I said, I could give you a politically correct answer, but might not be honest. I'll give you my honest answer. And I said, there are wars that will be going on forever. And I remind the audience of the war in Iraq. Iran-Iraq war in the 80s. More than 8 million people killed. Chemical, biological weapons were used by the Saddam Hussein regime on Kurdish and on Shias, on Iranians, on Kurdish, and on Iraqi Shias. It took, and only when the two sides were exhausted, the war ended. But comparatively, so more than 1 million people were killed. The war went on for 8 years. But that was comparatively easier to negotiate because you were dealing with two organized states. When Saddam Hussein ordered the end of the war on his side, they ended. When the Ayatollah Khomeini ordered the war to end, they ended. Well, Syria, you have multiple regional powers involved and extra regional powers involved and more than 100 groups. So I told the people, I'm sorry, I cannot give you, this will go on forever. And it is still going on and with extraordinarily unpredictable implications from that. In the midst of this, there are people like you. Many like you around the world who are doing their very best to save lives, to give hope to people. You have left a legacy, a mark in Timor-Leste. The first eye surgeons You created them. You trained them. We didn't have one before 2002. Now we have 8, all trained by you. I do not wish to take much more of your time. I thank you profusely for your commitment not only to Timor-Leste but to all other peoples, Aborigine in Australia, all others in the Asia-Pacific region. I thank the donors, those who, and when I heard you saying about you have like $1 billion fund, whatever, I said, well, I was thinking of, well, maybe I'll let them pay my hotel bill later. Because I thought you were really poor. And, but anyway, my small contribution coming here is a privilege. There is no greater profession than of a medical doctor. My apologies to the loyalty. I met one wife who is a lawyer of a doctor, and so my apologies. But in my country, I fought so hard for the health sector and education sector. I use strong language. Why we pay $3,000, $5,000 to politicians, to members of parliament, or always miss sessions, always fall asleep, and we pay miserably to our doctors. I fought hard to have to improve the conditions of all our health sector, not only the medical doctors, the cleaners in the hospital. They are exposed every day to danger, to bacteria. The people in the administration, and then education, the school teachers, the cleaners in the schools, all the way up to the universities. These two professions, at least they are the future of our country. They are the future of the country. And successful country like Finland is recognized. They have the best education system in the world. And you're part of it. Thank you, and God bless you all.